So, next, I wanted to talk a little bit about beans and peas because these are ones that people often get a huge harvest from, which is amazing. They're probably one of my favorite things to grow, especially for beginners, because they do give you a whole bunch of food just simply by one plant. So, these are something that I recommend for a lot of beginners just because it gives you a lot of food and you can get really excited and it's amazing. I love it. So, with that being said, you have a lot of food too. So, if you aren't eating it all right away, there's a lot of really easy ways to go about preserving beans and peas. Um, I have several favorite ways to go about doing it. Um, my first favorite way is to freeze them. And what I do with this is I have a video too showing our process of how we go about preserving and freezing these green beans. So we'll make sure we post that off to the side. Um, so with those, all we do is we simply take those green beans. I chop them up into smaller pieces and then I pop them into some boiling water, which is called blanching them. So I put them in boiling water and then I pop them out, pop them into an ice bath, and then I'll take them out of that. And then I will lay them flat into the freezer for about 24 hours and then I'll pull them out again, pop them into a Ziploc baggie like this. Now, this way it will last a long time in the freezer. And I always go about blanching them first, just so that way a lot of their flavor stays. And also with the texture and things like that that people complain about when they freeze things, it helps to retain a lot of that. So if you want to keep as much as the original flavor and texture and all of that in it, blanching it is definitely going to be your go-to thing. You want to make sure you do that. And it's super easy, super quick, fast. And I always do this and put them into little like serving size containers. So that way I just go through, I pull out a Ziploc baggie and that's enough for the whole family. So I'll pull it out and then I'll go through and saute it for that night. And I'll have fresh veggies even in the winter time, which is great. So that's a one of my favorite ways to go about doing it. Another one of my favorite things to do is going to be pulling them and letting them dry on the vine. And I have a picture of this. So, this is actually a picture of one of our favorite types of beans, which is the Orient Wonder, which is a yard long bean. Super fun to grow. If you guys haven't grown those before, you definitely need to try them because they are huge. They're super long. They're not kidding when they call them yard long beans, but they are so much fun. The kids love them. But we love those. And you can actually let them dry on the vine right here. You can see how there's some of them that are turning brown. So those right there, if I picked those and then I opened it up, you would just have those little seeds essentially, like what we planted. But what I do at the end of the season is I will let some of them go to seed like this. And then I'll go through and pull out those little beans. And then I can save all of those beans into a mason jar. And I can either go through and plant those next season, or I can cook them inside. So I have recipes too about how to make dried beans and all that, but they're super simple. All you need to do, especially if you have an Instant Pot or something like that, you can just pop those dried beans into an Instant Pot and you are good to go in like 30 minutes. It's amazing. So that's a really great way to go about having some long-term storage because obviously they're dried. They are going to be in a jar, so you can use them all year long. They're a great way to go about preserving without you having to really do any work because they're just drying out on the vine. So I do this accidentally a lot, sometimes at the end of the season, but other times I do it on purpose too, to go about and make sure that I have dried beans at the end. Other things you can do with beans, you definitely can go about canning them again as well. Um, I will say canning beans is Not my favorite because I do feel like they do lose a little bit of like the texture and color and things like that. Now, people say a way to go about helping with that is to drop like zinc tablets into the jar. So I haven't tried that personally, but I have heard that that is something that you can do to help to retain some of the color of the beans because they can kind of start to get dingy almost if you can them. Um, but I honestly, I much prefer these two ways of going about preserving them and just having them either in the freezer or in the mason jar and having just the dried beans.